This is the brand new Karoo, Hammerhead's latest GPS bike computer and arguably one of the top bike computers out on the market today. The new Karoo brings a smattering of hardware upgrades as well as software upgrades that pretty much gel the picture a bit more over past units. I've been using the Karoo 3 for the past few months now. It's a little bit moist out here right now. Putting it through its paces alongside the new SRAM Red access system, separate video and post coming on that here shortly, to see how well this thing compares to the existing Karoo 2, as well as the Garmin Edge 840 and the Wahoo Roam V2. In fact, I've got an entire comparison video coming up in the next 36 hours or so, diving into every single facet of the differences between those three top units. But for this video, we are going to dive into the Karoo 3, and the very first thing to know about it is that it's not technically called the Karoo 3. It's just called the new Karoo. And the reason for that is actually pretty interesting. Hammerhead does not want to use the Karoo 3, and in particular the initials for the Karoo 3 being K3, because it has associations with a bunch of people that wear bedroom sheets and cones on their heads, and they don't want to tie to that. And Hammerhead is pushing very hard for the media not to call it the Karoo 3. Except I'm not going to do that. Number one, it's the Karoo 3. That's what it is. It's the third generation of the Karoo 3. And number two, more importantly, I don't do that for any company, whether it's Hammerhead or Wahoo and there are countless numbers of trainers. I'm calling it like it is because that's what you as the consumer want, to be able to figure out what the heck this is compared to this thing when you're searching for it on the internet. Also, by the way, when I search for K3 in Google, I don't get the white sheet people. Instead, I get a Belgian pop band singing Mango Mango, which I'm telling you, there's a lot of mangoes in that song. Like seriously, the only words in that song are mango, mango. I took one for the team there, folks. Anyways, new tech specs on this thing. We're gonna run through that first. I'm gonna run through usage and mapping and navigation and climbing and accuracy, all this good stuff. Right there are the new tech specs compared to the Karoo 2. What you're noticing here is it's not a lot of major changes. This is definitely an evolutionary upgrade over a revolutionary upgrade. The biggest thing is actually the display brightness itself. It is considerably brighter. I took some video inside and outside showing side by side what this looks like. Inside is 0%, at 40%, and 100%. And then again, outside is 0%, 40%, and 100%, so you can see those differences. The biggest difference, though, is by far using the dark screen mode. The biggest difference is by far, though, on the data fields at 100% in direct sunlight. That's where you really do see the display absolutely pop compared to the previous generation. I'm going to dive into how that compares, though, against other units out in the market, but on the whole, it is way better than it used to be, and it puts it into the realm of like very competitive now. In fact, you'll see a new option here called Auto Bright On. That's using a new ambient light sensor in the Karoo 3 that will automatically change the light based on the lighting conditions that are outside around you, essentially saving battery but giving you the optimal lighting experience. It's worked pretty darn well for me on bright sunny days, stormy days like last night, and everything in between. So kudos on that one there. Now, of course, some of these are boring internal tech spec updates. They double the processor, they double the storage for maps, which is pretty useful. They did go ahead and also double the RAM. Which then brings the question of, is it any faster? And for that, I've got the two side by side, and we will start touching them. So I'm gonna swipe down from the top here, and you can see it is slightly faster than the past, but again, it's still kind of laggy. I'm gonna go ahead and swipe to the right once now. There we go. Again, definitely more lag on the Karoo 2 than the Karoo 3. Swipe one more time, pretty quick this time around, and then swipe up to get rid of that. I'm gonna go ahead and go into the menu here. Boop, there you go. That's definitely faster over here. I'm gonna open up my routes. There we go. Give it a second. And this is where you start to see those differences. Way faster over here. Going down here, we're gonna choose this Singing in the Rain route right there. And again, it's definitely faster over here, but it definitely depends on what thing you're doing. For some things, it's a lot faster. For most things, it's like, yeah, just so faster, if anything at all. Backing out here, back to the beginning, we'll tap the ride profile. It's gonna prepare a ride, open that up. Again, pretty much the same there. If I swipe to the right, it's, definitely is a little bit faster, but it's not like massively so. I'm gonna go back here to this page, let this thing enumerate. This one doesn't have GPS right now, so it doesn't really know where it is in the grand scheme of things. Thus, this is one of those areas that with this new faster processor, I really like Hammerhead to really focus on this in the future, making this even better. Again, it's kind of laggy compared to all of its competitors just for like day-to-day stuff, especially like the swipe down sometimes in a ride when you've gone a couple hours and there's navigation loaded. That swipe down tends to like really stutter versus here on the desk it's a little bit quicker because it's not routing and doing anything. The other notable thing they did is increase the chirp loudness on the unit. If you've been around Hammerhead a long time, you know that this is one of those things that has taken a few iterations over time. This time, they said, hold my beer. I'm just gonna let you listen to this for a second. And the best way to do this is to start a structured workout. Here we go, listen. You could probably hear that on mic, right? You probably heard that, okay? Now listen over here on the Karoo 3. 3, ready to be deaf. Holy cow. You have I don't know how well this mic is picking it up, but think about it this way. This is like being hit with a pillow, lightly, gently, very casually, almost intimately. This is like being hit by a baseball bat to the side of the head. For better or worse, there's no way to change the volume that I can find anyway, so it is all or nothing, but Karoo went with the you wanted beeps, we give you beeps. Okay, the rest of this stuff is relatively boring. They went ahead and they decreased the weight a little bit from 132 grams to 118 grams. They didn't get rid of the SIM card slot. Instead, they've given you a companion app on your phone to go ahead and do all the same things. I think that's fine in the grand scheme of things. Hammerhead's had the SIM card slot now for a few iterations. And in talking to Hammerhead, we're talking very low single-digit percentage people actually use that. So I think that's kind of a fair trade-off, especially now they have the companion app to do all the things that connectivity directly in the unit itself would have done. They've also increased the battery size and with that the battery life. But it wasn't just directly an increase in the battery itself, rather they've done a bunch of tuning to the processing side of it to go ahead and get more optimizations out of the battery. I'm going to dive into those battery stats, the battery burn stats a little later on the video, so stay tuned for that. And the final thing they've done from a hardware standpoint is to improve the responsiveness in the rain. For better or worse, I got to test that out a bunch of times over the last couple of months. And so for that, we're going to go out to our outside correspondent, Rainmaker.
It's just a little bit moist out here right now, so apologies for the audio quality. I'm just going to stick you in my mouth.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
No, I mean, just hang tight. Trust me on this. Okay. There we go. Tight. 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 Up. Down. Up. Up. Hey. 1 second. Turn. Woo, that was some lightning. Count. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 miles, right? That's the way it works.
So as you can probably hear and see, despite a camera in his mouth and all that mumbling, he had no problem swiping along between the different data pages. Sure, every once in a long while, one of the touches wouldn't exactly touch correctly, but it's just absolutely downpouring, thunder and lightning outside the whole bit, and overall, no real problems at all. And again, rain lock was not on. Rain lock is an option. If you swipe down from the top, you can go over and find the rain lock option. There we go, rain lock right there, which would lock the device entirely from the touchscreen being impacted by something like hard rain, etc. But this was entirely with rain lock off. Okay, so let me just give you a quick tour of this, going through some of the basics, then we'll get into navigation, climbing, Strava, and all that kind of goodness. This is, of course, the unit itself. It's got 2 buttons on the side here, 2 buttons on the side here, and 1 secret button right there for powering it on and off. The USB-C port is right here on the bottom. There we go. And again, it declares 15 hours of GPS time. On the back here is the Hammerhead mounting system, or HMS. No relation to Her Majesty's ship, totally different sort of thing. The good news, they include a Garmin adapter plate within the box. So if you have Garmin mounts on your bike, because a lot of bikes come with dedicated Garmin mounts built into them these days, you can go ahead and just slide that adapter in there and use that no problem, which is how I use it a lot of the time with some of the bikes that I have those built-in plates. Back on the front though, these are your different ride profiles. So in my case, I have one from road riding and for trainer profile. You can make one for mountain biking, etc. You would access those in basically this app store right here. You can install third-party apps on this. You can see I installed a screen recorder down at the bottom there, but you can install Spotify or the Zwift companion app, whatever the case may be, using slide loading. I did an entire separate post on that. I'll link to that somewhere here in the description if you want to check that out. But otherwise, these top ones are what you would see normally. So in this case, if I looked at profiles and I tap into that right there, I'm going to turn the brightness down just a touch bit here because it's so bright it's kind of overpowering the camera. So I'm just going to swipe over there and decrease the brightness down to, just say, 6%. That looks a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier to see now. And I go into the DCR road profile. And then here you can see my data page setup routing preferences. So I can say gravel, pavement, trail. I can go down, I can turn on and off things like turn-by-turn navigation, notifications if the beep is too loud, climber, Strava Live segments, sensors. They have an entire sensor pool that I'll talk about in just a second, but you can have sensors per bike or just use it as any sensor for any bike profile that you want, which is what I tend to do just to make my life a little bit easier. In the data pages, you can have a whole slate of custom data pages, up to 10 different data fields per page. And if I go to some of the graphical pages here, you can see some of the different layouts that I've got at the top that you can choose. So lots of flexibility, not really any problem with the different data pages or fields that you might want. Most of the settings are pretty self-explanatory. You can link up your Strava for Strava Live segments, Suunto for Suunto heat maps. Training metrics is where you can change your power zones and things like that. And you go on down here, there's offline mapping, Wi-Fi connectivity, phone pairing, live tracking, and so on. In the case of live tracking, this allows you to have this link right there. This will reset as soon as you go to off and on again. It gives you a new QR code. But you can just simply share this with your friends and family. And if you copy it from the companion app, then it goes ahead and shares that out as well. The companion app is new to the Karoo 3 and allows you to sync all the stuff that you used to have to sync via Wi-Fi, with the exception of maps, straight to the device. It's primarily designed when you're away from the house or any sort of Wi-Fi network to use your phone and the connectivity that your phone has on cellular and then route it via Bluetooth to this device. It is only compatible with the Karoo 3, not with the Karoo 2, because of hardware constraints on the Karoo 2. But it does let you sync routes, lets you sync structured workouts, lets you sync completed rides, and live tracking as well. The downside of the live tracking, though, is that while it does have that live tracking link, here's a picture of what it looked like from last night's ride, it doesn't show you where you actually rode historically. It just simply shows you where you're going on this planned route. So I wish that was a little bit better like Wahoo or Garmin's offering. So going on back here, let's briefly talk about sensors. You can see the sensors right there. These are all the sensors that I have in the unit right now. And you can add more sensors by tapping this lower right-hand button right there, which then will search for other sensors in the area. I've got some trainers over here and stuff that it should find in just a second here. One of the cool things, though, is that I said you can go ahead and pair up all of your SRAM access sensors as one cohesive group. You can see right now on the screen for the SRAM red axis that I have, where it's got all these as one group there, and I can see, of course, the battery status of that as well. My front derailleur needs charging, and so it gives me the alert also each time I powered up the unit that says, hey, your front derailleur is pretty low. Beyond, of course, the SRAM sensors, it supports all of the ANT+ and Bluetooth sensors that you know and love. Anything that follows those standards, from radar to bike lights to power meters to speed and cadence sensors to anything that's ANT+ electronic shifting, all that stuff is followed. With the notable exception, of course, of Shimano shifting. As you may remember, 2 years ago, Shimano got really upset and they pulled the licensing ability for SRAM to go ahead and display the Di2 information on this unit. There has been much discussed about that. At the end of the day, Shimano is wrong. Like, there's simply no other way about it other than that. This is information that every other bike computer and every other watch on the market today can easily display. It's not some sort of secret. It doesn't control your shifting. It just simply reads the current gear that you're in and your current battery information and displays it on this bike computer. And talking to SRAM and Hammerhead about this again over the past few months, they said this is entirely in Shimano's camp. They said they even went to Japan to try to meet with Shimano about this, and Shimano simply wouldn't even discuss the issue at all with them, wouldn't even meet with them about it. So it's really up to Shimano to help their own customers. The good news, though, is you can use a third-party plugin that will get all that data into your Karoo. It's actually incredibly well done, in fact. It's totally free. You can download it. I'll link to some information on that down in the description there in case you want to check that out. Now, when you're ready to ride and go back to your page here, just simply tap this and then press the bottom right-hand button to start that ride. It's really as easy as that. Now going to some in-ride footage that I have here that I took myself. What you can see here as you're riding along is any of the data pages that you've configured. Note there is both a dark mode and a light mode. If you look right now on the screen, you're seeing the dark mode option, so those black data fields. But you can also go to light mode like you see right now on the table right there. And you can swap back and forth by just simply swiping down from the top and then choosing this option right there that goes between dark mode and light mode. It takes a couple seconds for that to load up and then you're good to go. In addition, as you're riding, you have a couple different options for changing between data pages. You can swipe left and right using your finger on the screen, no problems at all, like I showed in the rain. You can also use the top two buttons right here to go left or to go right through the whole list of pages there, and it just continually circles through them. And if you have the new SRAM Red Access, you can also use the bonus buttons that are on the handlebars to shift between those as well. In fact, SRAM has opened up those bonus buttons to other third-party companies. Wahoo has announced today that they have connectivity there, and SRAM says that Garmin's connectivity on their Edge units is coming shortly as well. Now, before we get into the navigation side of things, let's talk about climbing and Strava. So from a climbing standpoint, Hammerhead has a climber feature. This means that as you approach a climb, it'll automatically show that climb coming up, show you information about it, and then once on the climb, it'll show you details for the distance as well as altitude to the top of the climb, amount of elevation you still have to climb. And the same is true whether you're on a free ride, so no particular route loaded, or a route loaded. In the case of the route loaded, it'll actually know all the additional climbs up ahead, and it'll say, you know, you're on climb number 10 of 12, or whatever the case is. These are all climbs I did on various rides over the last couple months, so you can see what some of that actually looks like. The other piece that you have there is Strava Live segments if you have a Strava account. All this works the same as it did in the past, which is actually good because that is so loud. And this is a good time to mention something that you cannot do, which is to get rid of notifications. So this notification just came in right now. This came in from YouTube. And if I swipe up, I can see the notification right there. But the thing is, I can't dismiss this. I can't swipe right. I can't do anything from the unit itself. Instead, I have to grab my phone and then dismiss it that way from the phone. This will sit here for hours, for my entire ride like this. I can bring it down to the bottom, like that, and put it at the bottom there. But I will always see the gray there, especially if I have a route or something like that loaded, like you see on the screenshot right there. Anyways, back to Strava. Hammerhead has, I would argue, the best overall Strava implementation. As you approach a Strava Live segment that you favorited, you'll see this countdown that you can see right here. And then once on it, it shows you where you are in relation to those different leaders. So in this case, you can see the KOM up ahead as well as my PR, but more importantly, you can see Mr. GP Llama and Shane Miller. Obviously, I can't have that happen. I can't have him be ahead in this whole thing. So I took Shane down. You know, just a thing that I did on a Tuesday night, no big deal, just kept on cruising and finished about 3 or 4 seconds ahead of him. Just enough that he would get that notification and know that he is now the loser. Sorry, Shane. But I'll see you in a few months and you can try to take some of those back. Now, once your ride is finished and before we talk navigation, you'll have the ability to go ahead and edit the ride details before you upload it to other platforms, which is actually super cool. So you can see here that I finished my ride and I can go ahead and give it a title. That title will carry over to Strava, so I can do that directly on my head unit. In my case, I do set all of my rides to private first and then edit them and add photos and stuff like that later on Strava. But I appreciate just being able to put the titles there. I can also select which platforms to upload it to if I don't want it to go to Strava or don't want it to go to Training Peaks or whatever the case is, directly from the device. And then once I hit save, it'll automatically sync up to the cloud and all those platforms. And it'll do that again using your phone now. Here I am outside last night in the middle of the road, nowhere near my house, and I simply saved that, and then a couple seconds later got the notification from Strava that it was on Strava from this unit, and using the title that I specified from the Karoo 3. So now I want to shift over to the navigation and mapping side of things. So I'm going to show you kind of how maps work first, and then show you how navigation works. So if I go down into the settings, I can go and find my offline maps. There we are right there. Keep in mind they double the storage space up to 64 gigs. 56 of that is usable. And you can see these are all the maps that I've downloaded thus far, all different countries and regions. And down here are nearby maps. So these are the ones I either have or haven't downloaded. So for example, Belgium, I have not yet downloaded on this unit. So I can tap that and you'll see 2 options. The base map, so if I choose that there, and then Suunto heat maps. The base map is your full detailed everything in their map. Versus the Suunto heat maps that you layer on top of that is, exactly as the name described, all the heat maps from Suunto. It's a partnership they've had with Suunto for a few years now. And depending on where you are in the world, this is really good or pretty much useless. Here in Europe, it's really good because a lot of people have used Suunto watches over the years. In the US, it's mostly good. In places like middle of nowhere Australia, probably not so awesome. But here it's great. I see tons and tons of heat data, and it's actually very, very useful. Now with your maps downloaded, you have a few different options for getting routes on here. The first is routes that you've basically created on services like Strava, Komoot, etc. And those will automatically sync into the device. You can see them right here, ones from last night, etc. And what's cool though is you can create collections. So I created a collection called Gran Canaria, a collection called Netherlands Home Routes, and you can just go from there. And you can do this all on the Hammerhead dashboard and just keep on creating collections of routes. That's really handy if you've got, as the name implies, routes in different areas, so you don't have to go through this giant list of routes like I have right there. Once you have the route you want, you just simply tap on that route. It gives you some brief information at the top. I do find it strange there's no map anymore at the top, just sort of the outline of the route. It doesn't have an elevation profile either. You can follow the route in forward or reverse, and then just simply check the little checkbox at the bottom, and off you go. As you're riding along, you're gonna get churn notifications as you approach that. Those will be in yellow. That's the color of the drawer for all the navigation related stuff. And if you swipe up on that, you'll see your entire list of all the directions till the end of the route and the distance till the end of the route. You can also add points of interest in there. I did kind of find it funny that there's those windmill points of interest on my route that I assume came from Strava. I didn't add this manually at all. I just tapped my route really quickly last night and I added the windmill there. So that's kind of cool. I'm not really sure why that windmill is showing up, but I do appreciate it. In the event that you go off course, like you see right here, it'll simply just route you to the next section of the course and just get you back on track again. In this case, I had made the route incorrectly, and so I just simply shortcutted the way I had intended to go. And then up ahead another kilometer or two, it basically caught back up again and merged back into the route. You can also route home at any point in time to the designated home location on the unit. And when you do that, you get a new pink line, which does the exact same thing as a reroute line. And of course, you can ignore these at any point in time, and it'll just keep kind of accommodating you. So most of the time, the pink line was great last night, coming back through the Thunderstorm. But a few times I was like, nah, I know a better way for this next little section, and just simply went straight, and it said, sure, fine, and then just updated the route accordingly. You can also use your phone to route to things as well. So you can use either Apple Maps or Google Maps, and then use a little forwarding icon in the upper right-hand corner and choose to forward that to the Hammerhead app on your phone, which then sends it to here and then there as a dot on the unit. So if that dot allows you to go ahead and just confirm it, then off you go and navigate just as you would normally. Okay, so with all that background, let's briefly talk about accuracy, because there's two things here that were improved, which is the GPS accuracy and elevation accuracy. In the case of GPS accuracy, they added a multi-band or dual frequency GPS chipset, which is kind of like the goldish standard of high accuracy from a GPS standpoint. We've seen virtually every other company add it, including Garmin and Wahoo, so it was time for Hammerhead to add it as well. So the first one right here is actually a very, very straight road and a very, very flat route in Florida from last week, 100K I did there. And this is notable because sometimes the easiest sounding things can be the hardest things for bike computers and watches to execute. And as you can see from the GPS tracks going back and forth on this road over and over again, it was spot on. Everything was on the pavement itself, no wanderings into the bushes, nothing like that. So kudos there. From an elevation standpoint, this elevation chart might worry you at first. Keep in mind, the scale of that chart is only 25 meters from top to bottom. So we're talking a very small amount of elevation here. But what you do notice though is that while these aren't that big a difference in the grand scheme of things, there is drift on the Karoo 3. You can see the Garmin down there in red at the bottom, and that's using continual calibration of the altimeter the entire time from GPS. So you see it's kind of nice and consistent over each one of those loops back and forth, versus the case of the Wahoo is slowly drifting as the weather shifts over those 3.5 hours. And then the Karoo is also slowly drifting as well. Its initial offset is a little bit higher, but it's drifting at basically the same rate as the Wahoo is. Still, don't freak out too much there. We're talking, again, a drift of what it looks like is maybe like 8 or 10 meters over the course of 3.5 hours. Next, we've got this ride in Gran Canaria, where I've gone up from basically the seashore all the way up into the mountains, back down again. And looking at a couple different sections here, here's some switchbacks going up as well as down on this section. And the Karoo is spot on. Zero problems whatsoever there. Just like the rest of the units that are bike computers are really, really good here. The same as other switchback section. This is notable because I went back and forth a gazillion times taking some video and stuff. Here's me going back and forth for video. And then here's a tunnel at the end there, right in the middle of the screen is actually about 150 or 200 meter tunnel. And it nails that perfectly, both the entry and the exit points. We don't see any weird GPS plots off to the side. From an elevation standpoint, very, very good overall. We do see, though, roughly about a 25 or so meter variance at the top of this 650 or 700 meter climb. So this is another ride I did where I started at the ocean on a boat. I got off the boat, started the ride right then and there, went all the way up like a 950,000 meter climb, lots and lots of switchbacks. And you can see on the switchbacks, perfect, like no problems there, no problems here, no problems there, spot on. But then we get to the elevation graph, and it's not awesome. What you notice is that the elevation in the Karoo on this graph anyways, shows that it's at 0 for the first 15 or so minutes. It's actually not at 0. The DC Rainmaker Analyzer doesn't show negative elevation values. We just haven't had a reason to. And so we don't show those. We cap it at 0. But if I look on Hammerhead's site, it shows the actual elevation is 126 meters negative at the beginning, and then it takes me 15 minutes to clear through that 126 meter barrier, getting into the zeros. But it's showing offset the entire time. So I sent it over to Hammerhead and I asked what the deal was, and essentially they said, it done screwed up. You can see their exact quote here on the screen as to what's going on there, but it did not properly calibrate like it should have been from the beginning. Interestingly, it'll actually use your phone and the companion app to calibrate, as well as, of course, using GPS to calibrate. It is clearly not using any sort of continual calibration, though, along the way. I then went and looked at every single other ride I had over the last 2 months, in particular focused on rides where I'd started after traveling somewhere, because I'd done a bunch of that, and no other ride had this issue. So this was just a single ride that had an issue. Also note, this is different than the elevation or altimeter issues that have been there in the past on the Hammerhead Karoo 2. Hammerhead said those issues were due to faulty components in the unit from a manufacturing batch, versus this is just a software issue where it simply did not at all calibrate at the beginning of the ride for some bug or something like that. So I've only seen this once out of every single ride I've had. Take that for what you want. As far as battery life goes, things are pretty solid. Remember, they claimed upwards of 15 hours per charge, but keep in mind it'll vary based on your display brightness as well as whether you're navigating, the map page, etc. In most of my testing, I was actually on the map page. And if you look at these charts right here, you can see the battery life over the course of those rides. This is about a 3.5 hour ride, and it projected to have about 12.5 hours of battery life based on the current burn rates. Here's another ride. This one was about 3 hours, and again, projected about 13 hours of battery life, 12.9 something, whatever it was, over the course of that ride. So pretty consistently I'm seeing that, and this is just with like normal backlight, usually auto backlight settings, which tended to hover around 40 to 50%, and again, generally the map page displayed. If I had normal data pages on as opposed to the map, I would get longer, lower the brightness level, would get longer, increase the brightness level, get shorter. Either way, I'm happy to see that they are way beyond what it used to be in the past, which is realistically like 8 to 9 hours in a best case scenario. So where do we stand overall? Well, the thing is, this isn't, as I said at the beginning, a revolutionary upgrade. It's designed to be an evolutionary upgrade to the past and also setting the stage for the future. For most existing Karoo 2 owners, there's probably not a singular feature on the Karoo 3 where you're like, damn, I want that. That's like, go out and buy the Karoo 3 just for that one feature. Instead, it's probably a number of those combined features that might drive you towards the Karoo 3. Perhaps it's a longer battery life, or it could be the louder beeps, or it could be the companion app for that syncing. To me, that is actually a pretty valuable feature. Anyways, as far as this unit goes, it's a solid buy for me. Like, I have got no problems with this. It works really well, and I'd be happy to use this as my daily bike computer, well, daily, I guess. If you did find this video interesting or useful, go ahead and whack that like button at the bottom, or subscribe for plenty more sports technology goodness. With that, have a good one.